Okay.
Rod Lurie, your new film, Killing Reagan, recreates one of the most stunning events of the last 30 years, the assassination attempt of Ronald Reagan by John Hinckley Jr. Excuse me, it's been more than 30 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, 35 years.
Yes, I just showed my age there. So what attracted you to this material?
Well, it's interesting. It's such as you said, it's a fascinating piece of history. So it doesn't take much to attract me to a fascinating piece of history or fascinating pieces of political history. What was interesting is my agent calls me and he says, "Hey, the Bill O'Reilly book, Killing Reagan, you want to make it into a movie? National Geographic's doing it." And I thought, I almost wanted to hang up on him because I'm a liberal Democrat. Almost all of us out here are liberal Democrats. And all of a sudden, I'm being offered Reagan and O'Reilly. And how would you like to do it? And then I read the book and I read the screenplay. And you know what? They're both remarkably nonpartisan. And Bill O'Reilly, who I don't agree with anything he says, more or less, but his show is really entertaining. He's a showman. And he knows what he's doing, and he's smart in articulating what his opinions are. And the book itself is really entertaining, and it's nonpartisan. It's a TikTok of what happened in the and in the assassination attempt, and what the screenplay was a 3 months before the assassination attempt, and then the couple of months afterward. And that I could live with, and that I could really do, I thought.
Well, let's put it into some context of what was going on at the time, because JFK had been assassinated not even 20 years prior.
Right.
There had been 2 assassination attempts on Gerald Ford.
Right.
Of course, MLK, Bobby Kennedy, Malcolm X,
Right.
and John Lennon I think, not even a week prior. So tensions were high, shall we say. There was a lot of violence going on at the time.
Right. Well, the assassination attempt on Lennon, I think, was on December 9th of 1980, and that really had a profound effect on Hinckley. And he saw how famous Mark Chapman became. He was obsessed and loved John Lennon as well, but he thought that if he could get the sort of attention that Chapman got, then that would also make him very famous, and that would influence maybe a relationship with Jodie Foster, which is what really his crazy endgame was. But you're right. We were in an era of many assassinations and assassination attempts. There had also been the successful attempt on Anwar Sadat. I mean, the assassination and the Gandhis, assassination was absolutely in the air. And so again, it's a very interesting part of world history.
Mm-hmm. So in the context of the film, I thought it was interesting the way that there's almost these 2 parallel stories in the beginning, right? Leading up to the assassination.
Right. It's like the Day of the Jackal. That was, I think that we were most influenced by Day of the Jackal. And I think that's a way that a lot of the killing films have gone. What I tried to do cinematically was that the Reagan side was going to be shot in sort of a classical John Frankenheimer style. Like, for example, that movie Path to War, where it really influenced us. And then on the side of the Hinckley, we went in the style of Taxi Driver. I shot it in that Technichrome. I tried to use a very jazzy, saxophone-heavy score. We even stole a couple of shots directly from Taxi Driver. I can see that from looking over your shoulder, I can see that you're a Scorsese fan, right?
I am, yes, and I was going to bring up some of your visual references to that film.
Oh yeah,
talking on the phone to Jodie and the camera.
Yeah, that's right. Very, and that was obviously an homage. And I was, it wasn't that we were influenced by it. We were overtly using Taxi Driver, really overtly. It's no accident.
So let's talk a little bit about the cast in this film, particularly Tim Matheson as Ronald Reagan and Cynthia Nixon as Nancy Reagan. What made them right for the parts?
Well, they're some of the best actors in America, especially Cynthia Nixon. I mean, I've always looked at her, ever since Amadeus, I've looked at her as one of the very best actors that we have. And Matheson is very underrated. He got two Emmy nominations for The West Wing, where he played the vice president. And I got to say that he really dug into this role. You know what he did? You know, he breathed like Ronald Reagan. I was very influenced by John Frankenheimer, who was a friend and mentor to me, and he cast Michael Gambon in Path to War as playing LBJ, and Michael is British, and so is Anthony Hopkins as Nixon and Daniel Day-Lewis as Lincoln. But I asked him, how did you do this? And he said, you have to get one or two things exactly right about that character in terms of character behavior, and you'll nail it. And for Gambon, it's the way that he leaned into people was exactly the way that Johnson leaned into people. And Matheson learned that Reagan breathed within sentences in a very specific way. And he got that part exactly right. And Reagan also leaned a little bit because he was hard of hearing, so he had to listen to people. So he leaned in, different than the way that LBJ leaned. And by understanding this, and he could get Reagan epidermically, and then, you know, he read so much about Reagan that he was able to really understand the guy.
There's a line in the film that Reagan says that I thought was pretty apropos to today. It's when he's preparing for the debate with Jimmy Carter, and he says to Nancy, politics is just like show business.
Right.
I thought that was pretty indicative of today. And then
it's true. And he says, you know, you gotta have a hell of an opening act and a hell of a, and then you close, then you have to have a hell of an ending. But it's interesting that you bring up today, because one of the reasons why I think that we're going to be a big hit is because I don't know what your political leanings are, and I hope I don't offend you.
Liberal Democrat.
Okay, good. Then you and I will agree that Donald Trump has made it so that even Democrats today are nostalgic for Reagan. Right? Look,
it's true, yeah.
Look, do you remember a few months ago, Donald Trump was up on stage somewhere in a hangar, and the Secret Service, they jump on stage with him because they've got. Do you remember that moment? And,
I do, yeah.
And Trump behaved like a little girl. He was a coward, you know, and you know he it looked like he was going to take a dump right there on the stage. He was so unnerved. And you compare that with Reagan, who actually had a bullet inside of him. He had a bullet inside of him, and the dignity with which he behaved was remarkable. So as much as I don't like Reagan as a president, by the way, he was even worse as an actor, but that's a whole other thing. I admire him as a man's man. You know, it's an example of how to behave, how to carry oneself. He had tremendous dignity, and you know, and while Trump is a performance of a demagogue, and Reagan was just a performer that appealed to the best in us. And that's what he's trying to do. And Trump is overtly trying to appeal to the worst in us.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was part of the, let's say, brilliance of Reagan, even though I didn't agree with him politically. He did understand, like I think Kennedy did and a lot of other politicians who were successful, the appearing, right? Not necessarily your good looks or anything like that, but the appearance of a leader.
Right, and I think that Obama has that as well. There's a certain dignity to him, and I think that we're starting to see that a little bit more from Hillary. Frankly, in these past couple of debates, she has been dignified and she's been cool-headed, and you know, and he's this you know, the spiraling moron, and you know, and just he's Reagan was never a reality show star. He was an actor who played heroes. Trump has never played a hero, and he never will be.
Mm-hmm. Knock on wood. So you've always been attracted to films about politics. In fact, one of your earlier films was The Contender, which won the Broadcast Film Critics Award, the Alan J. Pakula Award, and got a couple of Oscar nominations.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And another thing, I mean, that was given the context of the time that movie was made, what was going on with the Clinton sex scandal.
Right. I really base that more on the Clarence Thomas hearings, you know, sort of delving into those worlds. But, and I'm really looking into the double standards of how women are viewed. Could you imagine, for example, if, Hillary was out saying that she was going to grab cocks or grab pussies, and, it's like,
Yeah.
can you begin to fathom, or if Hillary walked onto that stage with 5 or 4 children from 3 different marriages, and that she had been, that she had personally been cheating on her past husbands, or, it's just unfathomable. It's just unfathomable. We can't even begin. But, talking about the stuff that Trump has gotten away with is, that's a book in and of itself, I would think, and a movie in and of itself.
Right. Somebody should make that movie, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't even know. Who do you think would play Donald Trump? I guess Alec Baldwin now. It's like,
yeah,
it's he's such a caricature that I don't know who could play him.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Perhaps it would be appropriate to just use actual footage of him and surround him with.
Yeah, that may be the only way to go. That may be the only way to go.
Because you're right. I mean, it would be hard to. What is it they say? Truth is stranger than fiction.
They do say that. They do say that, indeed.
So there were so many events from Reagan's presidency before and after the assassination attempt. I wonder if there was anything that perhaps you wanted to put in that just for time constraints you had to leave out, or maybe it didn't fit within the narrative.
Well, in the original screenplay, we showed a lot of the Jimmy Carter campaign side. And what I think people don't understand is how, Carter is known as a nice guy, but he was a brutal campaigner. And the amount of dirty tricks and the amount of venom that came out of Carter, I think, would really surprise audiences. And I wish that we could have put some of that in, but we didn't have the opportunity.
Well, maybe on the DVD.
Well, it won't, because we never shot it. We never got it. It's a 100-minute movie. It's a 100-minute movie, and we had like 19 days to shoot it. And so you have to be really, really judicious. I mean, there must be, for The Wolf of Wall Street, there must be like, and hundreds of outtakes, and because they had all the money to do that. We had 19 days to get this in, and I think we may have cut 2 scenes from the film after all is said and done.
Mm-hmm. So then how do you make those kinds of decisions in either visually, you know what I mean, in order to get as much coverage or get the right amount of coverage when you only have 19 days?
Well,
still
you
make
have
it cinematic?
This is where my being a West Point graduate helped me a little bit, is that, and the name of my company is Battle Plan, and you really have to have a battle plan going in every day. You have to know exactly what you want. You're not going to shoot anything that's fatty. You don't want to have anything that's going to end up on the floor of the editing room, although that will inevitably happen to a certain degree, but you want to minimize it. So you have to be, and your actors have to be really prepared. And, Tim and Cynthia, and Kyle Moore and all the actors actually were really, really well prepared.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on movies where actors don't know their lines and they just suck up your time. You just want to smack them up the head because everyone else is doing their damn job, and when they are cavalier about it, that's really upsetting. And these guys were not that.
Mm-hmm. Final thought: what do you think Ronald Reagan would have to say about Donald Trump if he were alive today?
Michael Reagan, his son, said that Donald Trump would never get his father's vote, and I think that is true. Trump has nowhere near the class and the dignity and the mannerisms, the regal mannerisms of Ronald Reagan. And I think that Reagan would be like Bush or George Bush Sr., and he would actually vote for Hillary as a statement about what this country is not. The difference between, I read somewhere that, maybe I read it because I wrote it, I'm not sure, that voting for Hillary is like drinking vinegar and voting for Trump is like drinking bleach. And, we may, for all her faults, she could be a very good president. I think there's no chance whatsoever that Trump could be a good president, but guess what? He's not winning. It may be an absolute landslide. The only similarity between the elections is going to be that it's going to be a landslide. Although, you know, this time the Democrat is going to win. And I want to tell you that I love Gold Derby. I'm obsessed with this site. You know, I used to do what you guys do. I used to prognosticate the Oscars when I did my radio show, and the Emmys and all those things. And I'm hoping that Tim and Cynthia sneak into the Golden Globes and all that. I think they deserve it.
Absolutely. Well, Rod, thank you so much, and thank you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.